Hello, Huskies, and welcome back to another edition of the Talk a Latte podcast with Christian and Jamie. My name is Jamie. I'm one of your hosts, and I have Christian here with me today.
Hi, I am also one of the hosts of our IPS podcast, and we have two amazing people with us today. Really, I know I say that a lot about our guests, but two really incredible staples, I think, at Tech. And so if you guys want to introduce yourselves, who are you? What do you do at Tech?
My name is Tiffany Jagger. I'm the manager of student outreach and retention. I work with both the Dean of Students office and the graduate school. I oversee the emergency funds and the Husky fan food pantry. I am a clinical case manager, so I work with students who might be experiencing crisis or some personal challenges and how to navigate that while being successful academically. And I work with Kelly. She is my supervisor, and I'm very grateful to be here.
And I'm Kelly Raffelli. I am the Dean of Students and the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs. My role as Dean of Students is to advocate for what students need and try to connect students with resources across campus, work with students to eliminate or identify and eliminate barriers, and overall just be a supportive person for the students, sort of a go-to person for them when they're in need.
And definitely today's episode, I feel like, is really important, especially for our international students, whether you're new incoming and you're not really sure where to go for what, or if you're a current student that might be going through those tough times and have those barriers, as Kelly mentioned. So let's start off with some resources on campus. I know there's probably different levels, emergent, non-emergent, but what do we have in terms of just general resources on campus for students?
I already mentioned that I oversee the Husky fan food pantry, which is located in the Fisher Hall, right across from the lecture hall 135, which is our primary physical space for the food pantry. You may have also seen some pop-up locations in the library for holiday seasons or breaks. We also have a location in Daniel Heights in the community area where there's a cupboard there, which we stock some staple items, shelf-stable food items, as well as in the Fisher Hall out in the loading dock there, and in the SDC. So that is one really great resource. We also have emergency meal packs located with public safety. We just recently located a refrigerator there, so we can offer some more fresh produce and things of that nature. And then in addition to that, we do have emergency resources such as emergency funds for both graduate students and undergraduate students. There's different funds available for different circumstances. So, for example, somebody who might be experiencing housing insecurity, we have a fund for that. Or somebody who might have unexpected medical expenses, we have funds for that. And everything in between. I think that in addition, we work very closely with many departments on campus. We're, one of those liaison offices, so we can really connect students with on-campus resources as well as community resources too, which we have a very inclusive, welcoming community, and they know that Michigan Tech is a part of that community, and they want to be just as supportive.
Another resource we have on campus is located in Wadsworth Hall is the Husky Clothing Closet. This is a place where you can come and find clothing. It could be hats, gloves, jackets, boots, pants, shirts, sweatshirts, whatever really you need. And then in the fall semester and spring semester, we also have a pop-up career closet, and this is where we call out to the community to donate gently used business clothes to help students prepare for the career fair. Now, throughout the year, you can get some business clothes in the clothing closet, but leading up to the career fairs is a really targeted time where we make sure to have lots of business style clothing that is free for everyone to use. And so that's located on the ground floor of Wadsworth Hall. which can be accessed by anyone on campus during the building's open hours, which is basically from 7:30 a.m. to midnight. So when the clothing closet is open, you can go in there and get some clothes.
Tiffany, I want to unpack a little bit the Husky Fan Pantry.
Yes.
You and I have talked about this quite a lot. For starters, I know that it's open to all students, but is there a sect of the university that caters more to the pantry? Or is it a type of student that you see more often than not?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that a majority of the students that we serve through the food pantry are our international graduate students. This is for various reasons. They come here likely with, what the clothes that they have and the backpack that they can carry. That doesn't include things like, cookware or utensils or even a cano burner, which we talked about earlier today. So a lot of those items can be supplemented, which is something we see a lot with our emergency assistance funds, as well as a group that we refer to as PASA, which is our parent and alumni group that are so gracious to make donations and provide things like gift cards for groceries or whatever you may want or need. And we're really trying to cater to our international graduate students and provide items at the food pantry that are highly in demand, whether that's, because of different community or cultural influences, and really meet those needs to the student demand.
And I know Kelly mentioned with the Husky clothing closet that that's kind of a drop-in when the building is open. But for Husky Fan or for those public safety emergency packs, what is the process for a student to go and get those?
Yeah, you can look us up through Google Calendar. You can type in Husky Fan at mtu.edu in the search on your Google Calendar. And wherever a volunteer is in the food pantry and available, you'll see it like an appointment on the Google Calendar. We are volunteer run and donation based, so our hours do fluctuate based on our volunteer availability. But I also, as manager, I oversee the food pantry. I can be contacted directly, and I can kind of coordinate with students too to kind of get what they need when they need it. And the public safety is open 24/7, so that's really our go-to resource for something that happens, unexpectedly. But we really have a good collaboration to make sure that students are met where they're at. And that's kind of why we have several different pop-up locations, so there's good accessibility.
I know that the Dean of Students works extremely hard on resources and providing and supporting students as much as they can. And because you guys are donation-based, are there other agencies, places that students can go to in town to find maybe the things that the pantry doesn't have or the clothing closet doesn't have?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we as a community have several affiliations with our faith-based organizations, which I didn't mention earlier and should have, was we also have the opportunity for students to have meals at these different organizations. For example, Canterbury House, right across the street from campus, they do free meals on Thursdays. Good Shepherd does free meals on Tuesdays, and St. Al's does meals on Fridays. So in addition to that, we also work very closely with Chartwells, who provides donated meal swipes to the dining halls, and those can be requested on demand through My Experience. And there's Salvation Army over in Hancock. They have collaborated with St. Vincent de Paul's food pantry. What else am I missing? Gosh, the list goes on and on.
We also collaborate with the farmers market in the summer.
Oh, yes, yes. So look forward to more produce in the food pantry over the summer, as well as we offer tokens, so students can come to the pantry and receive physical tokens that they can use, like dollar bills at the food pantry, at the farmers market. On a weekly basis. So that's something that our students really enjoy.
Yeah. And I know you touched briefly already, you mentioned emergency resources. And so specifically, what are some of those resources and what would constitute an emergency in a student's case?
Yeah, emergencies can be very subjective. We know that there are lots of different circumstances. Kind of the rule of thumb is it unexpected, and have you already exhausted resources outside of your control or your means to kind of help to substantiate your needs. So for example, you had an accident and you're injured and your only option is to get treatment. Specifically our international students are supposed to have health insurance, but we know that sometimes that health insurance doesn't cover everything. And there's a balance remaining, and sometimes that balance can be a lot, in addition to interest rates that students are already paying on their loans, and just trying to, manage their own life, not supported.
What the emergency fund can cover up to $500. When students go online to apply, they need to fill out a Google form with various questions that ask them to explain what the situation is, and then we also require any documentation. So, for example, to Tiffany's example of a medical bill, we would have the student upload the medical bill so that we can see the bill. The emergency fund does not cover tuition, so that is not something unexpected. You know when you come to Michigan Tech that you will have to pay tuition, and so that is not an emergency. It may be an emergency for you because you may not be able to pay it, but the emergency fund is for unexpected situations, and so you should expect to pay tuition and housing. So you can't use emergency funds to pay rent either. Those are two fixed expenses that you should anticipate that will be due and are required. All students, international or domestic, are required to pay those, and so the emergency funds cannot cover those types of bills. But certainly, we often tell students, when you're in a situation where you have to choose between eating or paying your cell phone bill, we want you to pay your cell phone bill and then come get food from the pantry. Or if you came here this winter and you thought winter jacket was a thin sweater and quickly realized that you need a heavy coat, that's an expense that you maybe didn't know about, and so that's where the clothing closet can come in. And many people donate brand new items to the clothing closet, but most of the items are gently used, meaning they're still in good shape, they're clean, they're well taken care of, but they're there for free for you to take. So those are examples of not having a winter coat in the winter, I think is an emergency. Because we can, as you have probably experienced, it can be very cold and snowy, and not having a proper coat, is a real concern. Now, the difference would be maybe you don't need a Patagonia coat, and so we'll talk later about needs versus wants. You may want a Patagonia $300 down jacket, but you don't need one. You need a coat, not necessarily a fancy designer coat. And so the pantry or the clothing closet's not going to be able to provide you that fancy coat, but they certainly can provide you a coat, or hopefully can provide you a coat, or we can help you find one in a community resource.
Kelly, I want to I want to, first of all, spotlight you because I filled some big shoes in stepping into the director of IPS, because for those of you that did not know, Kelly is the former IPS director. So
And
you
you're
know
way better.
you know the makeup really well of the international students. You have worked with them hand in hand. You have supported them throughout your time here, and especially during your time as director of IPS. Why do you think these resources are often taken up by international students versus domestic students?
I think for domestic students, unfortunately, I think in the United States there tends to be a stigma around utilizing resources like this, whether on one hand it could be that folks don't want people knowing that they need these resources, but more commonly what we find with our student body is students don't use these resources because they say, well, somebody needs it more than I do, and I can figure it out. And so they pass up using these resources because they want to make sure the resource is there for someone else. We want to create a system where there's enough resources for everyone, but that means that everyone is using the resources when they need them and not only because they're there. So domestic students often, like I said, don't use these resources because they may be embarrassed or they may be feeling ashamed that they are in a financial position that leads them to needing these resources. We certainly want to take away that stigma. That's why Tiffany and her team go through a lot of effort to make sure that privacy is respected and that we're keeping their information confidential and not sharing out their information. And then, like I said, also, on the other hand, it's because people are so wonderful and generous that they want to make sure there's enough resources for others and will sacrifice their own needs to make sure that somebody else has the resources they need.
Mm-hmm. And kind of touching on that, because there may be a lot of people that need something, but they do pass it along to those that are more in need than them. But we kind of talked about it already, but the difference between wants and needs. How can we tell the difference between that? Because I know lunch today, I'm like, I want Taco Bell, but I don't need Taco Bell, So instances like this with clothing or food or any of these other resources, how can we tell the difference between if a student needs or wants this?
I think an easy way to distinguish the two is this a basic need where if I don't have it, I will be I'll have a deficit, right? And we're
Suffer.
Yeah, I will suffer. This is an academic institution. We want you to be successful academically. So what basic needs need to be covered for you to be successful here academically? Obviously, you need to feed yourself and have sustenance. You need to sleep. You need to have a house or, housing. And yeah, making sure that those basic needs are met. The other side of that coin is, is it out of convenience or is it, the sprinkles on top, right? It would be really nice if I had this. It would be so convenient if, I could just stop by the food pantry and I don't have to make dinner, right? That's kind of the way that you can differentiate what is a want versus what is a need, just on a very basic level, I think.
Right, and I think sometimes folks may see an abundance of resources and think, oh, there's plenty for everyone, but maybe what they don't know is everything we have to give out is on the shelf. There's nothing in the back. And you may come and take rice, but you take 4 bags of rice, and now there's no more rice for others. So a want or a need is I need the rice. The want is I want 4 bags of rice. You don't need 4 bags of rice. You need 1 bag of rice for now. Something we get concerned about is when students are using the emergency resources as the standard way of surviving. So if they're coming to the pantry every day or week after week for the entire semester, that's not a sustainable plan. Guess what? We have other resources to help build a sustainable plan. So if you're finding yourself needing to come to the pantry every day, you should be asking yourself, is this a sustainable plan? Maybe I need to get some different type of help so that I can afford, to pay my bills and to eat and to pay my rent. But the pantry should be used as an emergency, not like Tiffany said, not a convenience or not an alternative to going to the grocery store and buying groceries and having to cook your own food. I agree with Jamie. I want to go out for lunch every day too. But instead, I get up at half an hour early every morning and make my lunch so that I save money on groceries. I'm feeding a family of 5. I have a set budget. I need to make sure that I can feed my family not just today, but for the whole entire month, or at least between paychecks. And so I have to make sure I have a plan for that. I think a misnomer, too, is that it's Michigan Tech providing these resources. And the reality is these resources are all coming from donations. The monetary resources are from donations. The goods that the alumni and the parents give, these are all donations. The meal swipes are donations. The food obviously is all donations. And so we don't know if next week we're going to have the same donation, right? And so we have to be strategic about how we're giving out the resources so that we can make sure everyone gets those resources.
And I can't, speak to everyone's wants and needs, but I can speak to what is the capacity for our food pantry, for example. And, we have a very small space, and we continue to see increasing demand. So, yeah, absolutely. How we're going to maintain that is an ongoing process. It's not something that's necessarily set in stone. It could look very different in future semesters and future years. So we want to maintain it as a resource for everyone, and not just select few who maybe can't distinguish the difference.
And I really want to bring this point home because I don't mince words with the international students. These resources oftentimes get abused by international students because of this maybe idea of they don't know how to approach it. Just like Kelly said, maybe if there are 4 bags of rice, I'm going to take them if they're free because I may need it one day, right? But these resources are not finite, and they are being taken away from other students who maybe need it. And so I want to just kind of walk me through, if I'm an international student and I am in need, but I'm sort of feeling ashamed about that, who do I go see? Who can I go see? And then when it comes to going to the food pantry, what are sort of the protocols when I go there? How much can I take? What's too much? What's not enough?
Yeah, there is a lot of people that care. First and foremost, I think your first point of contact tends to be your department, and it tends to be your faculty. And a lot of times I get referrals from faculty, staff, and then I usually reach out to the student and I have a conversation, like, hey, I was informed that you may be experiencing some challenges, let's talk about that. And then typically I inform them of the resources. Sometimes I even go over to the food pantry and I'm like, oh, here's the food pantry, take a look, try some things. If you like it, great, you're welcome to come back. Students really can come back every day. We tend to see students coming on a weekly basis, if not a monthly basis. And we're really trying to figure out what the best system is for those operations. Every food pantry across the nation has its own unique characteristics, and we really don't want to have to limit, but we do have to be reasonable. So, if you're coming back on a weekly basis, maybe you plan for the week and how many grains you need, how many vegetables can you expect to need. We follow the standards set by Feeding America. We're part of the West Michigan branch, and they typically measure a meal by like 1.2 pounds. And so we kind of measure our distributions in weight, how much we're distributing. And if a student is going to get 7 meals a week from the food pantry, that's about 8 to 10 pounds worth, right? So that could be something that we use to measure, which helps inform our budget, which helps inform donations, and how much we get from Feeding America on a monthly basis.
I think a place where students get hung up is we can't control the food that people donate. So sometimes students will come in and they'll be, 10 boxes of macaroni and cheese and 2 cans of, green beans and tomato soup. But that's what we have available. And we're trying hard to, when we do have monetary resources, to buy food that's more culturally familiar for our international students. We work with Jim's Food Mart, which typically, hopefully students have gone there, typically has more international fare there. And when we can purchase food, we do try to purchase culturally significant food, but we can't always control that. And so some of that takes planning. So like Tiffany was saying, if you're trying to plan out, 5 or 7 meals for the week, you have to think about, the things that you're able to get from the pantry and meals that you can make from them. And sometimes you have to be creative. The concern, of course, I would have is if the pantry is your only source of groceries, that's really limiting you. And that's not the role of the food pantry. It shouldn't be your only source. And so it's a supplementary, service.
And I think budgeting as well, obviously, is really important for students to keep in mind, too, because, they might be spending all their income on the newest video games, and then suddenly food and clothing becomes a need because you're spending it elsewhere. So I guess for students that might be coming in that have never been financially responsible on their own, what would you suggest to them to kind of plan their budget in those necessities and not taking advantage of those resources?
Yeah, I agree with you, especially coming from another country and coming to the U.S., and then you have the added in so for the students listening, think about when you first came to Michigan Tech, everything was new, everything was exciting. I'm going to go here, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go eat this fast food, I'm going to go eat that fast food because, you've heard about it, and now, but, Christian, I'm sure will agree with me, when we were young, McDonald's was like, you can get an entire meal and more for $5. Now, a meal at McDonald's is $20, and it's not cheap anymore. And so things that, used to be really cheap or are stereotypically thought of as a cheap way to eat are not. So my advice is, in the beginning, when you first starting out the budgeting process, start really conservatively with your money, and start tracking the prices of things. How much are you spending on food? What are you spending every day? Like really, our students, some of the smartest students in the world, they certainly know math. And so start calculating, how much am I spending on food? What did I spend? Keep a budget, create a monthly budget. Maybe you need to create a weekly budget. Where is your incoming, are you working and bringing in money? Or are you surviving here on savings? Then you need to create a budget so that you're including food. I mentioned earlier, I'm feeding a family of 5. On a weekly basis, I'm budgeting $300 for food, and that does not include going out, Dunkin' Donuts, grabbing coffees here and there, like all of these, drinking Validrome coffee. This all adds up, and you should really, you have to pay attention to all of those things, particularly if you're on a fixed income. Fixed income would be, maybe your tuition is paid for, maybe you have a housing stipend and that's paying for your housing, but it's not paying for your day-to-day. And so if you're working 20 hours a week on your on-campus job and you're making whatever you're making an hour, you've got to create a budget to figure out how are you eating, how are you paying your bills, and how are you going out and having fun, right? And how much does that fun cost? For many international students who Houghton may be the only place in the United States they've ever come to, you'll be quite shocked when you leave here and go somewhere else, and it costs a lot more. And so it's really important to set those financial boundaries, which can be challenging, particularly when you're in a new place, you're making new friends, your friends may have more financial resources than you do, and you may have to have some difficult conversations with your friends like, I can't afford to go to the movies again. I can't afford to go to the club. I can't afford to, catch a lift. I've got to use all my resources, smartly and save my money. And that way, when you do have an emergency, like an unexpected bill, we're here to help. But food should be something you're budgeting for, that's an expectation. You have to eat. So you should be budgeting for it.
And we did have an amazing episode as well in season 1 with Katie from Flagstar, and she also provided resources as well. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure that you do. I know she talked about all the budgeting forms and things like that they have as templates on Flagstar, and I know I love my spreadsheets and my worksheets, and so check that out because that can definitely help as a resource as well.
Love those spreadsheets.
Yes, we love it.
I really want to thank both of you again, but I want to ask before we finish off, what are some other ways that you both support students? And I know that you touched on it a little bit with your intros, but aside from food, aside from clothing, what can a student expect going to see you, making an appointment with one of you in your team?
I think we both have a really great ability to be a listening ear. Maybe we don't have the solutions all the time, but we have a really good network. And I think, I want to speak for both of us, that we're really good problem solvers. And I think it really just comes down to wanting to see you succeed. Because it's so amazing to see a student come here with nothing and no resources and no support, and to see you, 2 years, 4 years, even 6 years later, just thriving. And that's really, I think, what motivates me on a daily basis, to know that there is a solution, and if you are willing to ask for help and receive help, we're in this together. We can really get through it together.
But I would add that we're also going to hold you accountable, and we're also going to not solve the problem for you, but give you the resources to solve the problem for yourself. And so we, like Tiffany said, we have a huge network. Tiffany and I most likely know the answer. We know where to go. We know who to talk to. But we're not going to pick up the phone and make that call for you. We're not going to get in the car and bring you somewhere. We're going to tell you how you can go and do that, or we're going to challenge you to solve these problems on your own, because that's why you're here, right? And so, but we might be a little tough love sometimes. We do like the tough love model, and that's because we know you're capable. You wouldn't be at Michigan Tech if you weren't capable, and we know that. And so why would we pretend that you're not capable? And so we're going to give you all the support we can, and sometimes that might not be the support you're looking for, but know that we believe in you and we know you're capable of solving your own problems. We're just here to give you the resources to do it.
And as Christian mentioned, Kelly used to be the IPS director, and a motto I still live by that Kelly used to say in orientation was, "Your poor planning is not our emergency." And so I feel like that's also relevant to this as well. Yeah, I pulled that so many times. I love it. Yeah.
You're not keeping anything a secret here.
Yeah.
You have access to all the resources and can do all. The students at Michigan Tech are doing the most amazing research possible that I don't even understand most of it. You certainly can research how to access these resources and empower yourself to change the outcomes, if you're having a situation.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that our takeaways are the Dean of Students, along with a slew of collaborators, help these resources exist and are there for you to help you thrive and succeed during some very challenging times that are outside of your control, but that these resources, if they continue to be taken advantage of, will no longer exist. And that'll affect the entire student population, unfortunately. But I want to thank you both once again for coming in here, because I know we both know the tremendous work that you guys do for the students on campus, helping them succeed through so many things outside of their control, or even that they have caused themselves. And you show up every single day for them, and so we really appreciate you guys.
Yes, definitely. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Tiffany and Kelly are amazing in the Dean of Students office, so reach out, and thank you again, both of you, for being here and everything that you do for the students. And we will see you next time for another episode of the Talk a Latte podcast. Bye.
This has been an IPS production with Michigan Tech University. If you would like to be featured in a future episode, reach out to us at ips@mtu.edu or come to our office in the administration building. Bye!